Hi, Shane again. Today was my second full day of training with the Lineage project, and really it was a major, profound day because we talked about things that often are avoided, like class, gender, privilege, and culture. And it's triggered me in a lot of ways. Um, and we had really big, lengthy discussions on trauma as well. And I learned that trauma is more trapped in the body than in the mind, which brings more power to yoga, more power to qigong, which we did today, and more power to this improv acting that I'm in love with. And so I realize more and more that the children that I see as just love and great kids, and I know they had issues, but I don't know specifically what they did, to get where they are, have experienced either many or one significant trauma. And so things that I do with them and behaviors that they have, of course I know they're not personal, but to bring attention to them. Recently I was teaching an acting class, and the kids brought gender into the scene and disabilities into the scene, and race and ethnicity and different stereotypes, and I let it go on. They were being funny and they were poking fun, and they were dancing on the edge, and the staff that works there didn't like it and tried to shut it down, and for the most part, did a lot of yelling and reprimanding them. And I didn't get involved because I didn't want to fight with them, but I also wanted to hear what the children said. And what I'm learning from the Lineage Project is not only to let them have their opinions and say and feelings and sharing time, but to bring it as a discussion through using mindfulness. Like when we discussed privilege today, I talked about feeling very comfortable working with children who are not privileged and don't live in the suburbs and don't have moms that might be super involved and maybe are low income, or incarcerated children. And because I'm from Canarsie, Brooklyn, and I feel like I'm tough, or I don't feel comfortable working in an environment where people are privileged with money. I'm working on it. And then as I went to lunch, I realized that there's certain days I do feel privileged in my life. And of course, I'm even privileged to be free, to have my freedom, to have this computer, to, all that. But there are some days that, there's too many days in the month for the amount of money I have. And then I really don't feel privileged. Or when I feel a little under the weather and I don't have health insurance, so I feel really not privileged and I feel angry. But the fact that, if I chose to use my debit card, or if I had to borrow the money, I do have resources of places to ask. And so my sense of not feeling privileged, whenever that comes up, I get really self-centered and egocentric, and I really just focus on me. And so children who have experienced trauma and may never feel privileged, or feel like the world's against them, or they've never gotten opportunities, or children, black kids and Hispanic kids who, are free, and then they walk in the train station and, stop and frisk. It may happen to them, and they don't have anything to say about it. And so even though they may come from a privileged home, if they look rough and tough, or they look like they're suspicious, they can be totally randomly stopped and frisked. And yesterday, a woman came to speak. Her name is Carla, and she does a lot of research on social justice, and teaches at John Jay College. A lot of her students have stories of being stopped and frisked, and these are college students. And it reminded me of a story, of something that I saw a couple of weeks ago. I live in Prospect, Lefferts Gardens, and there's a mix of people here, and there's shootings here like anywhere in New York, and then there's people like me living here, and then there's a mix. I live in a building, but down the street there are, it's part of Lefferts Gardens, and it's beautiful old landmark homes, one family, huge homes. And one day I was parked my car and I was walking down the street of one of these beautiful streets, and these four boys were leaving the house, and one of their moms had her head out the window or whatever, the door, and was like, all right, guys, be safe, have a good time. And I watched her linger in the doorway, and I saw for a minute her children, her son, and their friends, and they were going out to the movie, wherever they were going. And then I also saw them as suspicious. And I saw her worry for a moment. I didn't even see anything. I just saw this vision of, wow, those kids who have a mother, somebody who cares, they're going out together. In order to look cool, they had their hats low, their pants weren't completely butt out, but they were pretty low. And I was like, wow, I could see how someone could see they're suspicious. And so through teaching mindfulness, whether you want to be a yoga teacher, whether you're a nothing teacher, whether you're a parent, it's so important to teach mindfulness, because let's say those kids were getting on the train to go somewhere, to go to the Barclay Center, which is now a new place to go, local, fairly local. And for some reason a cop wanted to, stop and frisk them. They have to know what to do in this scenario. Like, what if there's anger issues? What if they come up and say, you know what, don't touch me? Well, then guess what happens? Then it's a big problem. So the Lineage Project, being all about mindfulness and talking about color and asking the children, how do you identify yourself? There's a lot of black kids in the classes, but they speak Spanish. Like, not to dance around it, because what's the point? Just to ask questions. Like, I might have a theme of support. Who do you identify with? And if they identify with a church, like, do you feel supported by them? Or, just to integrate realness and the fact that I'm Jewish. And when any of these kids that I meet, they're like, you're Jewish, you don't look Jewish. And then they find that I'm not married and I don't have kids, and they're like, you're not a real Jew. And it's like, what does that mean? So all these things were talked about today, and the trauma piece, really big deal. And the idea of nothing that the children do is personal to me. If something comes up and they all of a sudden, I don't want to do yoga anymore, or they want to leave the room, or they start to fight with their friends, it's because stuff is coming up and they may not want it to. The teenagers in general are always moving and busy, but if they stop for a minute and have to breathe and focus and expand their lungs and open their heart, guess what? They start to think of stuff that maybe isn't fun and maybe feels uncomfortable physically and maybe makes their stomach feel really weak. And so what we're learning is how to accept it, appreciate it, validate it, and how to move on from it, how to set agreements and instead of calling them rules, and how it's not even important if there's so many physical movements made, as long as there's an awareness. Like, we talked about support today, and we all had to demonstrate a class, and my group talked about support. That was the theme today. And we began, my buddy began by talking about support like this, like how many kids sit like this, or or whatever they do. Support doesn't have to mean like support your rib cage, be yogi. It means, what happens if you're tired and you want to support your head on the desk and then your wrist starts to hurt? And just creating that mindfulness so that if they fall asleep in class and then they wake up and their head has pins and needles or their wrist really hurts, just to be mindful that sitting like this is making a choice versus sitting like this. And something else interesting was brought up, that when people are handcuffed, guess what? Their shoulders start to come forward. And then, that contraction and that closed feeling. And then someone else mentioned that adults in prison work out a certain way to look a certain way so that they can be strong and defend themselves. And it ends up looking very like, her. But in yoga, we're trying to do the opposite. So it's not always easy to roll your shoulders onto your back. And so obviously you guys can tell I'm more than passionate about what the work that I'm doing, and where I'm going to bring this to is, because I'm a special educator, I'm interested in bringing this to District 75 schools, high schools, middle schools, where children, maybe some of them have physical disabilities and learning disabilities, but the emotional disability factor for everyone, but for these children especially, is huge. And because I have my master's in special education, they might open the door for me. And so I'm thinking of a name, and it might be the Action Project or the Right Now I Feel Project. I'm not sure, but I'm going to bring together improv acting, centering relaxation techniques, along with mindfulness and the Lineage Project, and sell it to the Board of Education. And so it seems like a big deal, but it seems like it makes so much sense, because so much more money, on a factual sense, so much more money is spent on rehab for children that have already been arrested, that have already been suspended, expelled, la la la. But if I can reach the children before that happens, it can save the city money, the state money. It can save hearts. It can keep families together. It can keep children in the free world. So I appreciate you checking into this video, and I appreciate and hope that you follow my ideas and support them. And if it's not financially or monetarily, to just spread the word, because I don't usually do videos, but I felt like if I don't start now, when am I going to start? You know, and it's me with my laptop doing this, and I'll eventually have a Kickstarter project going and la la la. But in the meantime, I'm just being open to what I'm learning at Kickstarter and what these amazing teachers have to share with me based on their own experience and based on the model of the Lineage Project. If you're more curious about the work that I do, you can go to yourbeautifulchild.com, and you can email me and all that stuff from there. If you're interested in training with the Lineage Project, and this training is for any being, any human being can benefit from this. Because even being on the train and moving from one car to another because there's 5 kids that look suspicious, you being mindful of that, being more aware of your own self, and going deeper into your own practice of living in New York or wherever you live, and being mindful and open to people who are different than you, and not whispering, that's a black kid, there's a Jewish guy, but saying it out loud. They know they're black. They know they're Jewish, you know, if they're Orthodox, and you can see. So it's a fairly cost-effective training to take, and if you just feel like donating money, they're doing their spring fundraisers, and then some yoga studios are donating the money they earn from certain yoga classes. So I know Laughing Lotus is one of them. So check it out, lineageproject.org, and I can't wait to see what happens with this whole project and me getting involved in it and feeling as powerful and as passionate as I do with the population of children that I work with. So again, thank you for tuning in. This is Shane. Have a great evening. Bye.